But now let's take a break from this shitty billionaire and focus on one of the good ones. And no, I'm not talking about Taylor Swift, who donated $5 million recently to Hurricane Milton relief efforts. So good on her. So here's one of the many things I didn't have on my 2024 election bingo card. Turns out Mark Cuban, yes, the guy from Shark Tank, is one of Kamala's best surrogates, because this guy has been absolutely everywhere lately, spitting out more facts than a fax machine in 1993.
Question: do billionaires create jobs? The answer is no. Entrepreneurs create jobs. I'm an entrepreneur and I do my best to create jobs. But the reality is, in order to become a billionaire, the one thing you have to have is luck. Any billionaire who tells you they could just do it again? No. You have to be lucky. Maybe you have a rich parent. Question I get asked a lot is, should billionaires pay more in taxes? Yeah, we should pay more in taxes. I would not be in this position without this country, because nothing happens that's great, whether it's healthcare, teachers, roads, you name it, without people paying their taxes. It may be painful when you write that big check, but just think about how you got there. One of the most patriotic things that you can do when you're wealthy is pay your motherfucking taxes.
Couldn't agree more. Somebody tell that to Elon, and Trump for that matter. Here he is on Andrew Schultz's podcast explaining how Trump playing games with oil production created the massive inflation coming out of the pandemic.
So there was a point in time, because I was just reading about this, in 2020, right as the pandemic was starting. Yeah. And because there was a lot of the demand for oil and gas was falling, Russia and Saudi Arabia got into a price war on oil. And the price of gas just plummeted. Yeah. And a bunch of the people in the oil industry went to Donald Trump and said, you know MBS at Saudi Arabia, you know Putin, for better or worse, get them together.
And let's make this.
And let's reduce production so the price of oil goes up. Yeah. Now, here's the bargain. Do you save the oil companies, or do you save all the people who are suffering from the pandemic and want to pay less for gas?
Yeah.
And
you
so when
people.
And if you track it, the reduction in production of oil, they pulled back so much so that the price went up. And then over time, over the following 2 years, so that was from early 2020 to late 2022, they increased production. And when you increase production, the price of gas goes back down some. Yeah. So when they were reducing production, the price of gas went like this. And that was the start of inflation. Because just like he says all the time, drill, 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 because that'll reduce the prices of everything else. Yeah. Well, he literally caused the prices of everything else to start going up. So by the time he left,
the price of oil is expensive. The shipping is more expensive.
Everything is more
trickle down effect from oil.
Right.
And as a billionaire that's personally invested in over 400 businesses, there aren't too many people better equipped to understand how tariffs impact the economy. So here he is explaining how Trump's tariffs would be a nightmare for the economy and American businesses.
But to your point, right, what is it, 75% of manufacturers have under 20 employees, right? There's like 4,000 companies that have more than 5 manufacturing companies. Donald Trump is trying to come in with a hammer and say, you're the nail. I'm going to hit you with a 200% tariff, John Deere. Kamala Harris is saying, I'm going to give you incentives to manufacture more. Which do you think is going to work better with companies? Do you want to be underneath a hammer? Because when you put a 200% tariff on John Deere and only a 10 or 20% tariff on their Chinese competitors, their Chinese competitors are now less expensive than John Deere. And it's not so easy. We saw what happened with Carrier, right? When in 2016 they said, if you move down, we're going to tax you more, 35% tariff back then. And what Carrier did, they gamed the system, right? They just fired different employees.
Mark, you argue that, and it's always good to have you, you argue that Donald Trump's are particularly, I think you used the word insane. What did you mean by that?
Yep. Well, first of all, strategic tariffs aren't bad. So if a company's trying to dump, or a country's trying to dump in the United States and we have a manufacturer there, tariff them, that's great. But across the board tariffs, 10 or 20% is just inflationary. It's a tax on the American consumer. But to make matters even worse, and what's truly insane, when you threaten a legendary company like John Deere with a 200% tariff if they move, but only a 10 or 20% tariff on China, what you're doing is you're making it easy for the Chinese competitors to take business away from John Deere. That is the definition of insane.
A lot of your business colleagues say the definition of insane is supporting Kamala Harris. Yet you do. You're a smart, savvy businessman. You came from nothing to be a multi-billionaire, so you're pretty good at what you do. What do you see in her that you don't see in Donald Trump?
I think she's thorough. If you look at Donald, right, when he talks about his policies, they're very impetuous, they're impulsive, they're set to match whatever's happening at a rally. Whereas with the Harris campaign and Kamala herself, she's very, very thorough. She's very precise. Her team really vets every idea. And to me, that's important as a business person because you can trust what she says. Think about what happens when Donald comes out and says, I'm going to put a 10% cap on credit card interest rates. The next thing that happens isn't that he explains why, it's that everybody around him explains what he says. He can't explain it for himself. Everybody's got to explain for him. Or whether it's a 10 or 20 or 60% tariff, or the 200% on John Deere. With Kamala Harris, no one has to explain for her. She takes the time to vet her policies thoroughly. And when she says them and presents them, they are what they are. They're self-explanatory. I think what a lot of business people don't get, I look at the Harris campaign as a company and Kamala as the CEO, right? She's had, what, 45 days, 60 days to build an entire organization. And you look at the results. She went from negative favorability ratings. She went from recognition being relatively low. She went from being way behind in every single poll you looked at. And now look where she's at. Worst case, she's tied. And in many cases, she's ahead. When you're able to turn around a battleship like a presidential campaign and go from being way behind to tied or ahead, you're doing a lot right. And on the flip side, if you had what seemed like an insurmountable lead, and now you've given up that entire lead to another CEO, you're getting fired. Right? So I think that's the beautiful part of looking at what she's doing. She's run her campaign like a CEO. She's had success. And when I go to talk to business people, that's what I tell them. She's actually running her organization like a CEO. And that's the evidence that you need to know that she'll be a great leader, that she understands business, that she understands organizations, and she'll be a friend and partner to business across the board.
And even though he'd probably get farther talking to a goldfish than he would trying to explain anything to Theo Vaughn, Mark still went on his podcast and tried to explain that Don the Con's sleazy ways are so deeply ingrained in him at this point that there's no way he's changing now.
He's ripped off, I can't even tell you how many people, right? People I know, right, that he's ripped off.
I mean, there's been a lot of alleged issues with contractors.
No, I'm telling you about, I'm telling you people I know, right? Barbara Corcoran, she said something about this from Shark Tank, right? Mm-hmm. He hired her or asked her to sell a bunch of condos in a new building that he put up. And she did. Sold everything she asked. He offered her $4 million. He wouldn't pay her. She had to sue him just to get her money.
But how does somebody benefit by behaving like that? Like
when that's the only way you know? I mean, he was born rich. Right? He's never had to find his, Damon John.
Oh, yeah. He's always had good hair, dude. Rich people always have clean hair, I remember.
I don't know about that, but Trump University, Trump Foundation, Trump Soho, just example after example where he ripped off hard-working Americans again and again and again. And to think all of a sudden he just changed who he is, just not the case. Like, look what he's doing fucking now, right? A mint silver coin. If you're a billionaire, right? All of a sudden you just made $1 billion. You took your company public. You put $1 billion in the bank. Mm-hmm. Are you going to be selling silver medallion coins?
What do they look like?
Does it matter?
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
You know what I'm talking? It's just.
Is it like so? Oh, you mean like one of those
the commemorative coins?
Oh, commemorative
coins.
Right,
he's selling sneakers.
Oh, that's gangster, bro.
But why, if you're rich, selling sneakers, right?
Because
NFTs.
Donald also has he has a very.
Look at this shit.
Those
right?
fucking.